All right, good afternoon. Thank you to everyone who is joining us again for the weekly financial meeting. I am Catherine Ruiz. I am the Bureau Rates Analyst with the Bureau of EMS and Trauma. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. The first thing I would advise everyone is if you hover your mouse in the center of the Google Hangouts near the bottom, you'll have a pop-up menu that populates that allows you to mute yourself, hang up the call, or stop the video. So if you want to take a moment to mute yourself and stop your video if you don't want to be recorded. Just to be aware, you are being recorded. This will be posted to the internet, to the Brown Ambulance homepage. So if for some reason you don't want to be part of that recording, you might want to block your camera or stop recording or stop your audio or stop your video. The chat box is part of that. So just be aware of whatever gets posted in the chat box will be part of that recording as well. So for our presenters, just a reminder to mute yourself while you're not presenting. Shelley will be presenting our materials for us, so there's no need to screen share. And Ms. Taylor Pike, our applications analyst, is training as well because she's going to be helping us in the future. Thank you so very much. And *6, it'll be used to unmute yourself. If you're having issues with that, I advise you to use the chat box. Okay, well, let's get started. So first off, the Bureau of Financial Distributions. We are currently working on that. It will be available to all EMS agencies in Arizona once we have the particulars for that set forth. So the regions will work out the specifics on how to distribute those funds, and a statewide message will be sent out once those funds are available. So you won't have to wait until you get a heads up from me. You'll get a message from the Bureau directly that those funds are available. Of course, we will present about it once they are, but there's no need to wait on us if you want to apply. And you can be any type of entity to apply to those funds to this region in which you reside. Secondly, we have some telehealth network grant, if we could cue that up. So that's to promote rural teleemergency services for nonprofits, for-profits, and tribal applications. So this funding opportunity is aimed towards promoting rural teleemergency services by enhancing teleworth networks to deliver 24-hour emergency department consultation services via telehealth for rural providers. Now, the location for applications was listed on the agenda as a link, but that link has thus changed. I found that out this morning, so I will update that agenda when we post it to the website. If you would like to apply to this grant, the location for applying is grants.gov, www.grants.gov. There is contact information. If you have questions about the program, I highly advise the email. You'll get a response much faster than by phone. The second is the U.S. Department of Treasury CARES Act assistance for state, local, and tribal governments. So this Treasury CARES Act assistance, if we could cue that up, is a little bit of tidbits here. If you scroll down, it actually talks about a deadline and it talks about a certification process and a deadline that has since passed and a certification process that is rather vague. That does not apply to you folks. So this money was already distributed to our eligible providers. If we can click on the eligibility units list, the PDF there at the top. Top right.
The top one?
Yes, says eligible dash units.
Oh, not sure. Right.
Oop, not quite that.
Okay, back.
It's on the far right. It's already open.
Oh, it is.
There we go. Awesome. So if you are Maricopa County, Mesa, Phoenix, Pima County, or Tucson, they have already received that money. Why did they receive the money? Because it's based on census population. That's why they were able to receive that money. So if you want some of their money, because they already have it, go ahead and contact them. They are allowed to pass through those funds. So reach out to them and they'll be able to pass through those funds to you. If you want to read the guidance documents, if we can click back to the agenda, there's a guidance document dated April 22nd and an FAQ for frequently asked questions for May 4th. Any questions that you have can be directed to these two gentlemen who are special advisors to the president. They do respond, but they will most likely just direct you to your most closest region eligible applicant who received that money. But they do respond if you have a specific question about it that you can't seem to find an answer to. All right, so next up we have is Paul. And so Paul is having issues unmuting himself. So we're going to try something a bit different today to have Paul present. Paul, are you there?
I am. Okay, sorry about the audio quality, but Google phone wouldn't let me unmute, so I'll try and be brief. Just to kind of go over again, on the AAA side, our priorities continue to be to get them funding for all-round ambulance service providers and suppliers. That's the $48,000 per ambulance. The association is working with the White House and the Department of Health and HHS, Health and Human Services, as well as some folks in Congress. Number 2 priority is to get priority access to PPE for EMS. And lastly, there's some others, but the 3 big ones, the last one is to get a waiver so Medicare would pay us for treatment in place. And that's a tough one. Medicare is saying that they need statutory authority to make that change. We're kind of arguing with it. That's in the works. The other thing that came out of a meeting I attended yesterday was a discussion about on the agenda. It's down as COVID-4 legislation. That's what our lobbyist was calling it. But I read this morning it's now being called CARES 2. And this is the movement by the Democrats in the House to get another CARES bill. I'm sure everybody's been reading about it. It's going to be kind of contentious. But in respect to us, a couple of things of interest. Number 1 is there's discussion around hazardous duty pay, which would be really cool. But I would caution everyone to keep your eye on this because of unintended consequences. Just make sure that they're watch to see if there's a requirement for the employers to chip in to get federal money, and can we afford that, etc. So it sounds really good, but just keep a close eye on what the requirements could be if it moves. And the second thing, there was actually a bill in the House. It's called the HEROES Act of 2020, which would exempt the first $50,000 of income from federal taxes for first responders. So that actually is in the House, and the other stuff is being discussed and hammered together now. That's my brief report.
And the Federal Reserve loans, Paul?
That was not mine. I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry.
All right, then I'll go ahead and take that from there.
Please.
Federal Reserve loans has expanded to lend to small businesses and medium businesses that were performing well prior to COVID. So if they were negatively affected because of COVID, there's some funding available to them. So it's eligible if you have less than 15,000 employees or less than $5 billion in revenue in 2019. I think that can definitely qualify quite a different array of people. If you have any questions about said program, you have an email address there. It is coming soon. It has not been released yet, so particulars are not quite there, but this is coming and it will be coming very soon. So if this is something that you might want to look into, there's definitely a lot of guidance documents available. There's quite a bit of information already available, despite the fact that it's not available yet. So feel free to read up on that if that's something that you might want to look into if you haven't been able to qualify for some of the other funding for small and medium businesses that have been released. So Jason, if you may.
Okay, I'd like to follow up for probably like the 3rd time on the HHS stimulus / CARES provider relief fund. There's just a lot of moving parts with this, so I see this being on the agenda for a little while. First of all, to recap and clarify a few things on the new formula that HHS put into place. That is, again, that they're trying to dole out the $50 billion distribution based on this ratio. 2019 net patient revenues for each provider. So that we didn't have quite that level of detail last week. So I just want to clarify that they're asking for your 2019 net patient revenues. So after your settlements and bad debt. and then comparing that to all federal healthcare spending now. So that's 2.5 trillion. Once they have that ratio, they apply that to the 50 billion to get the dollar amount that you received. Previously, when they distributed the initial amount that hit everyone's bank accounts automatically, that first, I believe it was 30 billion, it was based just on Medicare revenue. So apparently what it works out to be is that if you as a provider have a payer mix where Medicare represents about 32% of your payer mix, then you're at that break-even point where you're not going to get additional funding beyond your first distribution. So attribute that to the AAA webinar, which was some good information for us there. I'm going to launch into a little bit of what I know about housekeeping. But what I'd like to ask is that people pose questions or comments while I'm going through this, because I think really I'd like to serve more as a facilitator for this and get questions out there for what people are actually seeing with some of this housekeeping stuff, so that we have more of a little bit more of a roundtable as to what's going on out there. First of all, the HHS website on this stimulus stated that for the second distribution, the one that occurred on April 24th or later, if you got some money on that, if you receive your funds automatically because you're part of the 2020 cost reporting sample, you must go in and submit your revenue information via the portal that's linked on that website, so that you can verify that information. And again, Google CARES Provider Relief Fund, this is the first, the HHS official page is going to be your first result that pops up, and that's where the portal is. So make sure if you got your funding automatically for that, that you move forward with submitting your revenue. Second, the deadline for accepting the funds and attesting to the terms and conditions has been extended apparently from 30 to 45 days. And I think one of my big questions following up from last week is whether any government providers on the call right now have had more success with uploading their audited financials on the portal. Mesa has not gone in to try to do that because Mesa's at that break-even point. So I am curious as to whether HHS has fixed that, and because last time they were focusing on, it seemed to only work for entities who had tax forms. And if you were a municipal or other local government entity, you weren't able to upload your audited financial statements. So type in a question, and maybe Catherine or Shelley, if you guys can read that out to me, we can get the info. Otherwise, I'm going to keep moving on until that comes in. The last piece is Tucson actually had a question about the whether, since this is technically a grant, whether the federal government was going to issue catalog of federal domestic assistance numbers or CFDA numbers. And this is kind of an accounting housekeeping thing. It sounds like the general belief in the legal community anyway is that the federal government will eventually issue a CFDA number or numbers for these funds, but it has not been specified. So that's the best that I can approach or address that at this point.
You actually had a note in the chat box, Jason, if I could interrupt you. Someone stated that Rincon Valley Fire District was able to upload the ARCR and annual audit related to that documentation that needed to be submitted.
Very nice. So they got that fixed. Thanks, Jamie. Very cool. Oh, and it says ARCR also. Okay, that's because I was thinking about that. That was in the comments last week, Catherine. Some back and forth about whether the ARCR would be eligible to upload. I like the idea of that. I mean, you have the audited financial statements. The ARCR obviously isn't audited, but it's at the ambulance level. So for municipalities that have multiple lines of service, it seems relevant to upload that ARCR because it's going to have the ambulance specific revenue that they're looking for. So that's my opinion anyway. Whether they use it is beyond me. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. We had talked before about the CMS Accelerated Payment Program. This was essentially I would call it kind of like a payday loan or an advance on claims payments. That program has been suspended. No new applications are accepted as of April 26th. And the reasoning behind that is that HHS feels that the stimulus we just discussed, the CARES Provider Relief Fund, is really the better source to help with cash flow issues, as opposed to that accelerated and advanced payment program. So just heads up that is no longer available. And then finally, and I have to.
I can interrupt you one more time. I'm so sorry, Jason.
No, not a problem at all.
I apologize. Someone on the call who's getting text messages, your burring is coming through. We keep hearing it. So just a friendly reminder again about the housekeeping items. If you could mute yourself by hovering your mouse in the center bottom of your screen, those buttons will populate about muting your microphone, mute or turning off your camera. So please, if you could mute yourself, it gets a little bit difficult to hear when Jason keeps getting interrupted. Thank you. Sorry. Proceed.
No, no worries. And to that end, if anyone missed anything, let me know and I'll cover it again. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into the my last item, the 3C here, the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission grant. And I'll ask Catherine also if I misstate anything or if you have clarification, by all means jump in and help me out with this. This week it was. We knew it was coming last week, and now it's here, and it's been announced. This is a grant to assist state, county, local, tribal justice agencies and nonprofit organizations that provide services to the criminal justice system to help, like FEMA and any other thing. The purpose is to help prevent, prepare, and respond to the coronavirus. What I can tell from this thing is they've got two waves of funding. The first is to address more the short-term protections for those who are in contact with inmates. So this appears to be focused more on PPE and inmate medical costs, that kind of thing. The second one, I'm not sure if this one's relevant to ambulance providers. It's more to address long-term caseload type issues. I'm going to go ahead and defer to the applicate or the announcement that Shelley has on the screen, or Catherine, if you happen to know. My interpretation of it is I wasn't sure if that second wave was really relevant for ambulance providers.
And I believe that'd be up to them just to decide as to how they would disperse that funds. So I don't know if it would be a short term or a long term either, Jason. But okay. Anyone's available who wants clarification on that, they definitely have contact information there via email and via phone. And this gentleman does both very quickly. You can call him, he will answer, or you can send him an email and he'll answer that too.
Very nice. The only other thing I wanted to point out on this is that there is no match requirement for this grant. So it makes it a little easier for applicants to plan and budget for it. That concludes my portion.
Thank you so much, Jason. Last but certainly not least, Ed, if you could.
Yes, I'm going to go over my section of presentation. The first one is 4A. It's a Better Business Bureau Main Street Matters program. It's for small businesses, 5 to 20 employees, and not for nonprofits, which is kind of weird. It's grants are awarded monthly, so you can apply each month. There's a webinar available tomorrow. If you click on that webinar thing, it'll take you straight there. So we're recommending you apply as soon as possible if you have the ability to. And there's an email right there. If you don't mind, if you click on that, oh, you did click on it. If you go over there to where it says application information and click on that location, there you go. There's a little video right there, and it goes through all the requirements for the application, specifically who can apply, how you can apply, what information you need to file the application, and then at the bottom right there it says apply now. This is a very limited, the application, you can't put in part of the application, you have to put all the information in. So I think it's a good idea if you look through the video and make sure you got all your information that they're requiring up front, you can go through it very quickly. My second part is that federal grant search tool under grants.gov. I went in there to look and see what that consisted of, and specifically, it's all grants, federal grants, through all the agencies, Commerce Department, Agriculture, Health and Human Services. And so this website gives you the opportunity to look up grants, find out what the requirements are, file the applications, and so on. And it is quite massive. These are all federal grants that you can apply for. It gives you any restrictions, information, and also gives you a lot of training on how to file for federal grants. Very good website, I think. 4C is my Arizona Commerce Authority boot camp. Under that one is a little bit different than the other ones. It's a development organization. They provide a variety of items, training, help on health. They also provide information on short-term and long-term loans. The loans actually have the ability to go in and borrow some money as a small entity and repay it, but they'll give you some, like they'll actually make the payments for like maybe the first or three or 4 months. And it's a variety of information. Plus there's a lot of training information in there too. The first seminar, if you look at it, is a cash flow seminar. And specifically it provides sources of funding and some agencies you can apply for. Good website for a small business.
Thank you, Ed. Deeply appreciate it. As always, all previous presentations and resources are uploaded to the Ground Ambulance homepage. We have a section there for all of these presentations, and I have also completed a complete list of all funding opportunities that we have talked about and presented into one master file that will continually be updated. So almost like a cliff notes of all presentations, if you will. So you scroll down, it's that second hyperlink that says all previously presented funding sources. You click on that, it'll populate pretty much everything we've ever talked about regarding where you can get funding, who it's for, what are the deadlines, where can you find it. So all these hyperlinks do work. So essentially think of this as the cliff notes of all the presentations. Of course, I'm trying not to make it too wordy. So the presentations will definitely have a lot more comprehensive information than just the cliff notes. Next is the N95 decontamination masks. If you haven't heard about this already, they're offering free decontamination of N95s for a limited period of time. I've been trying to clarify how long this is going to be free for our providers. This is not just for first responders, it's also for all healthcare. So if there's a hospital that you work with, if there's a clinic that you work with, anyone essentially in the healthcare industry who needs an N95 to operate normally and get them decontaminated for free through this company. So feel free to register. They have a location here in Phoenix. So it's very fortunate for us that it is in our backyard. ADHS, EMS, and 911 resources page is constantly being updated, always having new information added. So check it out if you have not already. Last but not least, we have COVID pages in Spanish. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. For those of you who have people in your community who are Spanish speaking, this would be very helpful for them. If you notice that all of the tabs on the far left, they populate in Spanish automatically. So it doesn't matter what banner you click on from there, it's going to be completely in Spanish. So this would be a great resource for those people in your community who are not English speakers. Last but not least, we still have this email address for any COVID specific questions. So if you have any questions that we have not answered, or if you have other questions related to COVID that are not financial, that are more operational, feel free to shoot them to that email and you will get an answer on that. So last but not least, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box or *6 to unmute yourself about today's presentation or a previous one. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so I will assume that we're good. So a special shout out to everyone who has been helping make this possible, taking time out of their days. I really, really appreciate Paul Pedersen of Arizona Ambulance of Douglas, Jason Taylor of City of Mesa, and Edward Armijo from GMR. It has been a wonder working with you folks and everyone who's been chiming in, making this possible. I really hope that we're getting to things that are helpful to you. Shelley and Taylor, thank you so very much for presenting today. We really appreciate your assistance. Without you, it would probably be a nightmare because then I'd have to do it. So thank you.
Good job, Kat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you all next week.
Sounds good. Sounds good.